The holographic display showed numbers that made Ambassador Realm's antennae twitch with satisfaction. 50,000 Chitara warriors. All armed, all ready, all willing to die for the coalition. She clicked her mandibles together in pride as the other species' representatives watched the data scroll past. Commander Hravost's forearms gestured at the tactical map floating above the conference table. His blue skin rippled with determination as he spoke in his deep, watery voice. The swarm has consumed 17 worlds in 3 sectors. Dravis 7 is our line in the sand. We stop them here or we lose everything beyond this point. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 12 different species nodded their various heads, appendages, and sensory organs. The Navran had committed 30,000 shock troops. The Prismata, with their crystalline bodies that could refract energy weapons, had pledged 20,000 shield bearers. The reptilian Saros brought 15,000 heavy assault units. Every species had answered the call with overwhelming force. Humanity? Hravost's voice carried across the room as he looked at the human section of the chamber. What forces do you commit to this battle? Diane Carter stood from her seat slowly. She was a small woman by human standards, wearing a simple gray suit that looked plain compared to the elaborate armor and biological displays of the other species. Her dark eyes scanned the room calmly before she spoke. We're sending 1 soldier. Silence fell across the chamber like a physical weight. Relon was the first to break it with a chittering sound that translated as laughter through the universal translator. 1. Surely the translation matrix has malfunctioned. No malfunction, Diane said quietly. Lance Corporal Owen Price, he's already en route. His drop pod launched 3 days ago. Hravost's facial tentacles curled in what humans had learned to recognize as confusion mixed with insult. Ambassador Carter, this coalition faces an enemy that has destroyed worlds. We have committed over 200,000 warriors to this assault, and humanity sends 1 soldier? That's correct. More laughter rippled through the chamber, though some species remained silent, unsure if this was a human joke they didn't understand. Relon stood up, her 6 legs clicking against the metal floor as she approached the human ambassador. Is this how humanity shows respect? Relon's voice carried an edge of anger now. We bleed together, we die together, yet you mock us with this insult. 1 soldier? Are humans cowards, or do you simply not care if we fail? Diane met the taller alien's multifaceted eyes without flinching. Lance Corporal Price volunteered for this assignment. He's exactly what this battle needs. 1 human against a hive mind that consumed 17 worlds. A new voice joined the conversation. It belonged to General Cross of the Saros, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. Your warrior will be dead before the first wave lands. This is either supreme arrogance or supreme stupidity. Maybe both, Diane said with a slight smile that confused the aliens even more. But Owen knows what he's doing. Hravost brought his massive fist down on the table, making the holographic display flicker. This is unacceptable. We needed humanity's support, your technology, your numbers. Instead, you send 1 soldier and expect us to believe this is adequate? I expect you to watch your sensors, Diane replied calmly. Lance Corporal Price's pod will land in Sector 7 North, approximately 50 kilometers from your main landing zone. Deep in swarm territory. He requested the location himself. Madness, Relon hissed. He'll be torn apart before he leaves his pod. I doubt that. The Chitara ambassador's antennae quivered with rage. Your species joins the coalition, accepts our protection, shares our resources. Yet when we need you most, you send 1 fool to die alone. I will remember this insult, Ambassador Carter. When this battle is lost and millions die, humanity will bear the shame of its cowardice. Other voices joined in, some angry, some simply bewildered. The crystalline Prismata representative chimed like breaking glass, a sound that meant deep disappointment in their culture. The Navran officers made burbling sounds of disgust. Even the usually quiet whisperers whose species communicated through scent released pheromones that the translators interpreted as profound confusion. Diane waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. Owen Price is 28 years old. Before he enlisted, he was a wilderness survival instructor on Earth. He can start a fire in the rain using rocks and tree bark. He can track animals across terrain where there's no visible trail. He can build shelter from nothing and find food where others would starve. He grew up on a world where the gravity is twice what most of you experience as normal, where the predators include animals that can crush bone with their jaws and others that can inject venom that stops your heart in seconds. He learned to survive in environments that would kill most species in hours. Survival skills, Cross growled. How charming. The swarm doesn't care about fire starting or shelter building. They care about overwhelming force and biological warfare. Yes, Diane agreed. And Owen Price has spent the last 3 years studying everything we know about the swarm. Their biology, their tactics, their hive structure. He volunteered for this mission because he believed he could make a difference. One soldier cannot make a difference against millions, Provost said, though his voice had lost some of its anger and now carried something closer to pity. I am sorry, Ambassador. Your warrior dies for nothing. We will honor his sacrifice, brief as it will be, but humanity has failed the Coalition today. Diane picked up her datapad and walked toward the exit. At the doorway, she paused and looked back at the assembled representatives. Lance Corporal Price asked me to pass along a message before he launched. He said, and I quote, "Tell them to keep up if they can. Good luck, Commander. I think you're going to need it." She left the chamber to a chorus of angry chittering, burbling, and various other sounds of frustration. In the tactical center next door, junior officers were already taking bets on how long the lone human would survive. The average guess was 43 minutes after landing. Deep in space, 3 days away from Dravis 7, a single drop pod hurtled through the darkness. Inside, Owen Price sat in the quiet, checking his gear one more time. His rifle was simple by Coalition standards. His armor was light. His supplies were minimal, but his eyes were calm as he reviewed the data files on his helmet display, memorizing terrain maps and swarm movement patterns. He whispered to himself in the darkness of the pod, words that no one else would hear. One human, one battle. Let's see who's laughing when this is over. The pod's countdown timer showed 71 hours until landing. Owen closed his eyes and slept. He would need his rest. The real work was about to begin. The sky above Dravis 7 turned black with falling metal. Thousands of drop pods screamed through the atmosphere like meteor showers, each one carrying soldiers from a dozen different species. The Chitara pods were sleek and silent. The Navran pod splashed down in the planet's scattered water reserves. The Prismata simply descended on beams of refracted light, needing no pods at all. In the Coalition command ship orbiting the planet, Provost watched the deployment with 3 of his eyes while the 4th monitored the tactical display. Green dots filled the holographic map, each one representing a unit successfully landed and operational. Tens of thousands of them, spreading across the designated landing zones like a flood of determination. All primary forces have touched down, reported Lieutenant Vass, a young Navran officer whose skin showed nervous patterns of gray and blue. Minimal losses during descent. The swarm hasn't engaged our landing zones yet. They will, Provost said grimly. They're waiting for us to group up. Then they'll hit us with everything they have. Reln entered the command center, her armor freshly polished for battle even though she would be coordinating from orbit. Status of the human? Vass checked his console. The single human pod landed 72 minutes ago in Sector 7 North. Life signs are active. He's moving. Moving where? Reln asked, moving closer to study the display. Toward the objective, away from all Coalition forces. Vass highlighted the single blue dot on the map that represented Owen Price. It was deep in red territory, surrounded by estimated swarm positions marked in crimson. The fool, Reln muttered. He'll be dead within the hour. Mark my words, Commander. When his signal goes dark, I want it recorded that humanity failed their obligation to this coalition. Provost said nothing, but his tentacles curled thoughtfully as he watched that lone blue dot move steadily through hostile territory. Something about the human's path seemed deliberate, purposeful, not the panicked running of a soldier who realized his mistake, but the careful movement of someone following a plan. The command center filled with activity as the main coalition forces began their advance. The Chitara warriors moved in tight formations, their natural armor gleaming in the alien sunlight. The Navran troops used their aquatic advantages, moving through the industrial city's flooded lower levels. The Sorrow's heavy units smashed through fortified positions with brutal efficiency, then the swarm hit them. They came from everywhere at once. From underground tunnels, from the ruins of buildings, from nests hidden in the twisted metal of the dead city. The swarm soldiers were insectoid nightmares, each one the size of a human but moving with the coordination of a single mind. Acid dripped from specialized warriors. Blade-limbed fighters tore through armor. Flying variants dropped from above like living missiles. Contact, All sectors reporting heavy engagement. Vass's voice climbed an octave as casualty reports flooded in. The green dots on the display started winking out, one by one, then in clusters. Reln watched in horror as a full Chitara battalion, 500 warriors strong, got surrounded and cut off from support. "Send reinforcements to Sector 4 East immediately." "Belay that order," Provost said quietly, his eyes fixed on a different part of the display. "Commander?" Reln spun toward him, antennae quivering with rage. "Look at Sector 7 North." The tactical officer brought up the detailed scan of the sector where Owen had landed. The display showed something impossible. In the 72 minutes since the human had touched down, the estimated swarm presence in that sector had dropped by 200 units. "Sensor malfunction," Reln said immediately. "There's no way one soldier could eliminate 200 swarm in just over an hour." "Run a diagnostic," Provost ordered. Vass worked his console frantically while explosions and weapon fire echoed through the audio feeds from the surface. "Sensors are functioning normally, Commander. The readings are accurate. There are 217 confirmed dead swarm in Sector 7 North. Chemical signatures confirm the kills are recent within the last hour. One soldier?" Even Hravost's voice carried disbelief now. "Vass, deploy a reconnaissance drone to that sector. I want visual confirmation." The drone launched from the command ship and dove toward the planet's surface, its high-speed engines getting it there in minutes. The feed appeared on the main display and the entire command center went silent. Sector 7 North was a graveyard. Swarm bodies lay scattered across a 3-kilometer area, but not randomly. They were arranged in patterns that suggested carefully laid traps. Some had been caught in explosions from what looked like improvised devices built from scavenged materials. Others had fallen into pit traps that had been covered and disguised. Still more showed signs of having been shot from elevated positions with precision aim. Each one a single kill shot, but there was no sign of Owen Price himself. The drone moved deeper into the sector, following the trail of destruction. It found collapsed tunnels where swarm reinforcements had tried to respond, only to be buried under tons of rubble. It found a water treatment facility that had been sabotaged, flooding swarm nest chambers and drowning hundreds before they could escape. It found supply caches that had been poisoned with industrial chemicals, their guards lying dead around them. "By the depths," Provost whispered. "He's not fighting them. He's hunting them." Reln couldn't look away from the screen. The drone's camera caught a glimpse of movement in a ruined building, something human-sized that vanished before the camera could focus. Then the drone's sensors picked up a dozen swarm warriors converging on that position from multiple angles. "He's about to be surrounded," Vass said. "Should we attempt to extract?" "Keep watching," Provost ordered. The swarm warriors moved into the building in perfect coordination, their hive mind allowing them to act as a single organism. The drone circled the building, waiting to record the human's death. The building exploded. Not from missiles or heavy weapons, but from what looked like a chain reaction of small, carefully placed charges. The structure collapsed inward, burying all 12 swarm warriors under tons of concrete and steel. As the dust cleared, the drone's sensors detected movement on a rooftop 2 buildings away. A human figure carrying a rifle moving quickly toward the next position. He was already gone before the swarm could react. "Replay that," Reln demanded. "Show me how he moved." Vass rewound the footage. In the brief moment the camera had captured Owen, they could see his movements were economic, efficient. No wasted motion. He'd been waiting for the swarm to enter his trap, had detonated it remotely and moved to his next position in seconds, like he'd practiced it 1,000 times. "Update on main coalition forces?" Provost asked, pulling his attention from the human sector. "Heavy casualties, Commander. We've lost 8,000 soldiers. Swarm losses are estimated at 7,000. The fighting is brutal. They're using tactics we haven't seen before, almost like they're learning from us in real time." "And the human sector?" Vass checked his console again, then checked it a second time, disbelief clear on his face. "Swarm losses in Sector 7 North now exceed 400. Human casualties remain at 0. Provost leaned back in his command chair, his tentacles going still in thought. Around the command center, junior officers were abandoning their attempts to look professional and were openly staring at the tactical display, showing that single blue dot moving deeper into enemy territory. "Commander, the human is approaching Sector 12 West," Vass reported. "That's a major swarm staging area. Estimates suggest over 5,000 swarm in that sector alone. Can we get a direct communication channel to him? Kravost asked. Yes, sir. Linking now. The comm channel opened with a crackle of static. When Hravost spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Human soldier. This is Commander Hravost. What is your status? There was a long pause before Owen's voice came through, calm and slightly out of breath. Busy, make it quick. Reln bristled at the casual disrespect, but Hravost waved her silent. Your kill count shows over 400 swarm eliminated. Your tactics are unexpected. What is your current objective? Winning, Owen replied. There was a sound of movement, then a muffled impact. Stay out of Sector 12 West for the next 10 minutes. I've got charges set. Charges? What are you planning to? The comm cut off. Exactly 8 minutes later, Sector 12 West vanished from the tactical display in a series of massive explosions. The seismic sensors in orbit registered it as a magnitude 4.2 earthquake. When the readings settled and the dust cleared enough for satellites to penetrate, the entire swarm staging area was gone, collapsed, buried under a carefully orchestrated demolition that must have taken hours to set up. Estimated swarm casualties in that one strike: 15,000. The command center was dead silent. On the main display, the casualty counts updated automatically. Coalition forces had eliminated 8,000 swarm but lost 8,000 soldiers. One human had eliminated over 15,000 swarm and suffered 0 casualties. Reln's antennae drooped. That's not possible. No single soldier could have set charges through an entire sector without being detected by a hive mind. Apparently, Hravost said softly, humans can. The blue dot representing Owen Price appeared again on the sensors, now moving towards Sector 9 South. The command staff watched it like they were witnessing something from a myth. All units. Hravost spoke into the general comm channel, his voice carrying to every coalition soldier on the surface. Be advised, the human operative is active in multiple sectors. Do not engage targets in his designated zones, and whatever you do, try to keep up. In the ruins below, Owen Price reloaded his rifle and consulted his tactical map. 19,000 swarm down, several million to go. He allowed himself a small smile in the darkness. This was just getting started. Dawn broke over Dravis 7 in shades of orange and purple, alien colors from an alien sun. But the beauty was lost on the soldiers fighting in the ruins below. For the coalition forces, the first night of battle had been hell. General Cross crouched behind a shattered wall, his Saros heavy armor scorched and dented from repeated swarm attacks. Around him, what remained of his battalion tried to hold a defensive position against waves of enemy soldiers that seemed endless. His communications officer was dead. His second-in-command was wounded, and his forces were down to 30% strength. General, the western approach is collapsing, Lieutenant Bohr shouted over the sound of weapons fire. We can't hold them much longer. Cross roared a battle cry and fired his plasma cannon into the approaching swarm mass. 3 went down, but 10 more took their places. This was the nightmare of fighting a hive mind. They never retreated, never hesitated, never showed fear. They just kept coming until everything was dead. A massive swarm warrior, twice the size of the others, charged toward Cross's position. Its blade-like arms could cut through Saros' armor like it was paper. Cross aimed his cannon for a kill shot. The swarm warrior's head exploded before he could fire. Then another swarm soldier dropped, shot from somewhere Cross couldn't see. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession, each shot perfectly placed, each kill instant. The approaching swarm wave faltered, confused by an attack they couldn't identify the source of. What in the burning sands? Cross muttered, scanning the ruins for the shooter. His comm unit crackled to life. General Cross, pull your forces back 300 meters to the east. Move now. Cross recognized the voice from the command briefings. The human. Price, where are you? Providing covering fire. Move your people now. You've got about 90 seconds before the swarm figures out what's happening and adapts. Cross didn't waste time arguing. He ordered the retreat and his surviving soldiers scrambled back through the rubble, while unseen shots continued to drop swarm warriors with mechanical precision. They made it 200 meters before the swarm horde turned their attention toward the source of the shooting. The entire ruined building where Owen had been firing from exploded in a cascade of preset charges. Swarm soldiers by the dozens were caught in the blast or buried under collapsing walls. By the time the dust settled, Cross's battalion had escaped the trap and the swarm had lost another 100 warriors. Price, I owe you a drink, Cross said into his comm, breathing hard. I don't drink, but you can repay me by not getting surrounded again. I've got other sectors to cover. The channel clicked off. Cross looked at his tactical display. The blue dot marking the human's position was already moving toward another crisis point, where a Chitara company was pinned down by swarm acid spitters. In orbit, Commander Hravost hadn't slept in 23 hours. He stood at his command station, watching the battle unfold with growing amazement and horror. Horror at the casualties his forces were taking. Amazement at what one human was doing to shift the tide. Current casualty report, he ordered. Lieutenant Vass looked exhausted as he read the numbers. Coalition forces have eliminated 22,000 swarm. Our losses are 18,000 soldiers. We're losing ground in 7 sectors and barely holding in 12 more. And Price? Confirmed kills now exceed 4,200. He's been operating continuously for 17 hours with no rest. Medical sensors show elevated heart rate and signs of fatigue, but he's still combat effective. He's currently engaging in Sector 14 South, supporting a Prismata unit that was about to be overrun. Hravost pulled up the feed from that sector. The Prismata soldiers, with their crystalline bodies that could absorb and redirect energy, were excellent at defending against energy weapons. But the swarm had adapted, sending in blade-limbed warriors that could shatter crystal with physical strikes. The Prismata were being cut to pieces. Owen appeared on the feed like a ghost, moving through the shadows of ruined buildings. He wasn't using energy weapons like the Coalition forces. His rifle fired solid projectiles. Primitive by galactic standards but devastatingly effective. Each shot was placed with surgical precision. Headshots, shots to the swarm's neural clusters, shots to the joints that crippled rather than killed, forcing other swarm to try to rescue their wounded and creating more targets. But it wasn't just his shooting that made Hravost's tentacles curl with fascination. It was everything else. Owen used the environment like a weapon. He collapsed walls to create choke points. He ignited fuel lines to create barriers of fire. He contaminated water sources with chemicals that made the swarm avoid entire areas. He even used swarm pheromones, somehow extracted from dead warriors to confuse their communications and make them attack each other. He's fighting like they're animals, Reln said quietly. She'd been watching the feeds all night too, unable to look away. Not like soldiers, like prey. Because that's what they are to him, Hravost realized. Ambassador Carter tried to tell us. Humans are persistence hunters. They don't just fight. They stalk. They tire their prey out. They exploit every weakness until the prey has nothing left. A new alert flashed on the tactical display. Commander, we have a problem, Vass said urgently. Long-range sensors are detecting massive swarm reinforcements moving towards Sector 7 Prime. That's where our main command post is located on the surface. Estimated enemy forces at 30,000 and growing. Hravost felt his skin go cold. The surface command post coordinated all ground operations. If they lost it, the entire battle fell apart. How long until they arrive? 2 hours. Can we evacuate the command post in time? Not without abandoning our communication network. We'd be fighting blind. Reln stepped forward. We need to send every available unit to defend that position. Pull forces from other sectors if we have to. If we do that, those sectors will collapse, Hravost countered. We lose either way. Commander, incoming transmission from Price, Vass said. He's requesting detailed maps of the underground tunnel network beneath Sector 7 Prime. Hravost opened the channel immediately. Price, have you been monitoring our command frequencies? Hard not to when you're broadcasting in the clear, Owen replied. His voice sounded tired now, rough. Send me those tunnel maps. I've got an idea. The swarm force heading for our command post numbers in the tens of thousands. You can't possibly— I can't fight them head-on, Owen interrupted. But I don't need to. The swarm use those tunnels to move reinforcements without being spotted from orbit, right? Yes, but so I collapse the tunnels. Bury their reinforcements underground before they reach your people. It'll take most of their 30,000 out of the fight and buy you time to reinforce the surface position properly. Reln leaned toward the comm. Human, those tunnels stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Even if you had the explosives to collapse them, which you don't, you'd need days to place enough charges to make a difference. I don't need to collapse all of them. Just the key junctions. The swarm will do the rest when they panic and stampede. Send me the maps, Commander. I'm already heading that way. Hravost made the decision in seconds. Vass, transmit the tunnel data. Price, Be advised, if you go into those tunnels, you'll be completely cut off from support. Our sensors can't penetrate that deep. If you get in trouble, we can't help you. When did you start being able to help me? Owen's voice carried dark humor. Maps received. Going dark for the next few hours. Try not to lose too badly while I'm busy. The comm channel clicked off. On the tactical display, the blue dot representing Owen Price moved toward the tunnel entrances and then vanished from sensors. He's insane, Relm said. Maybe, Prevost agreed. But he's kept us in this fight when we should have broken hours ago. Every time a sector starts to fail, he appears and turns it around. The swarm are adapting to our tactics, but they can't adapt to him because they don't understand him. The swarm are a hive mind, Vass added, studying his screens. They think collectively. They make decisions based on patterns and predictions, but Price doesn't follow patterns. Every engagement is different. Every trap is unique. He's unpredictable, and that makes him terrifying to an enemy that relies on predictability. In the ruins of Sector 4 West, a Chitara scout team was conducting a sweep when they found something that made them stop and stare. Dozens of swarm corpses arranged in a deliberate pattern. It took them several minutes to realize what they were looking at. The bodies spelled out words in Galactic common script. Stay loud, they're listening. The team leader reported it to command, confused. Prevost understood immediately. Owen was telling them that the swarm tracked prey by sound and movement. The coalition forces with their heavy weapons and coordinated formations were easy to track. Owen moved silently, struck without warning, and vanished before the swarm could respond. He wasn't just fighting a different battle than the coalition forces. He was fighting a different kind of war entirely. Deep beneath the surface, in tunnels that had never seen light, Owen Price moved through the darkness with careful steps. His helmet's low-light vision turned the world into shades of green and gray. The tunnels stank of swarm pheromones and organic waste, a smell that would have made most species sick. Owen breathed through his mouth and kept moving. He'd already placed charges at 3 key junctions, using explosives he'd made from scavenged swarm biomatter and industrial chemicals. The swarm themselves had provided the materials for their own doom. Now he needed to reach 2 more junctions before the main swarm force entered the tunnel network. Movement ahead. Owen froze, his rifle ready. A swarm scout, one of the smaller variants used for tunnel navigation, skittered past his position without noticing him. Owen had covered himself in tunnel mud and swarm pheromones, masking his scent and his thermal signature. To the swarm's senses, he was just another part of the tunnel wall. He let the scout pass and continued deeper. His tactical timer showed 90 minutes until the swarm reinforcements reached the tunnels. Plenty of time, probably. Maybe. Owen smiled grimly in the darkness. This was the kind of fight humans had been built for over millions of years of evolution. In the dark. In tight spaces. Against prey that thought it was safe in its own nest. The swarm were about to learn what happened when you let a human into your home. Above ground, the coalition forces fought on, not knowing that their entire fate now rested on one soldier in tunnels they couldn't see, fighting enemies they couldn't count, with weapons he'd made himself from their own materials. Prevost watched his tactical display and waited. All he could do was hope that Ambassador Carter had been right. That one human was exactly what this battle needed. The Swarm Queen had existed for 300 years. Her consciousness spread across billions of individual warriors. She had consumed 17 worlds, absorbed countless species into her hive, and never known defeat. Her mind was vast, her strategies perfect, her victory inevitable. Until now. Something was wrong with this battle. Her warriors were dying in patterns she didn't understand. They would converge on a position, following perfect hive logic, and then vanish in explosions or collapse or poison. The enemy forces she could predict. Their movements were coordinated, their tactics standard, their behavior logical. But there was one presence on the battlefield that made no sense. A single entity, operating alone. Impossible to predict. It struck from unexpected angles, used weapons and tactics that varied every engagement, and seemed to understand her warriors better than they understood themselves. Her hive mind tried to classify it, to predict its next move, but every analysis failed. The entity was chaos in a universe of order, and chaos terrified her. In the depths of the tunnel network, Owen placed his 5th and final charge. The swarm reinforcements were already entering the far end of the tunnels, their chittering and clicking echoing through the passages. He could hear them coming, 30,000 strong, all moving with synchronized purpose toward the surface. His timer showed 3 minutes until they reached the junction points where his charges waited. Owen started moving back the way he came, but not at a run. Running in tunnels made noise, and noise meant being found. Instead, he moved with careful speed, each footstep placed deliberately, each breath controlled. A group of swarm warriors rounded a corner ahead of him. Owen pressed himself into a side tunnel and went completely still. The warriors passed within meters, but his improvised camouflage of tunnel mud and pheromones kept him invisible to their senses. He counted 17 of them, all heading toward the surface, all about to die. When they were past, Owen continued his retreat. His internal countdown reached 0. Time to see if his math was right. The first explosion was deep underground, buried so far that the coalition forces on the surface only felt a minor tremor. But in the tunnels, it was catastrophic. The tunnel junction collapsed instantly, burying thousands of swarm warriors under tons of rock and dirt. The second explosion followed 3 seconds later, then the third, fourth, and fifth in rapid succession. Owen had studied the geological surveys of this planet. He knew where the unstable areas were, where the tunnel supports were weakest, where one collapse would trigger others in a chain reaction. He'd placed his charges to start an avalanche effect. The swarm reinforcements panicked. Their hive mind, so perfect for coordination, became their enemy as 30,000 warriors all received the same command at once: escape. They stampeded in every direction, their combined weight and frantic movement causing more collapses. Tunnels that had stood for centuries gave way under the stress. Underground chambers filled with debris. Secondary and tertiary collapses spread like a disease through the tunnel network. Owen felt the ground shaking around him as he ran now, no longer worried about noise because the whole underground world was roaring like thunder. He could feel the tunnel behind him collapsing, chasing him like a living thing. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe even through his helmet filters. He spotted light ahead, one of the surface entrances. Owen pushed his exhausted body harder, his legs burning from hours of constant movement, his lungs struggling with the dust and chemical-tainted air. The tunnel behind him gave a final groan of defeat and began its collapse. Owen dove through the entrance and rolled into open air just as the tunnel system caved in behind him. The ground shook for another full minute as the chain reaction completed itself. When it finally stopped, the entire tunnel network beneath Sector 7 Prime had become one massive grave. Coalition sensors showed the results immediately. Of the 30,000 swarm reinforcements heading for the command post, 27,000 had been buried alive. The surviving 3,000 emerged from distant tunnel exits, disoriented and scattered, easy targets for waiting coalition forces. In orbit, Lieutenant Vass stared at his screen in disbelief. "Commander, seismic activity has stopped. The tunnel network is completely collapsed. Estimated swarm casualties from the collapse alone are over 25,000. Ravos leaned forward. "And Price?" His signal just reappeared at the northern tunnel entrance. Vital signs are elevated but stable. He's moving toward Sector 3 East now." Realm made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "He just killed 25,000 swarm by himself and he's already moving to the next battle? What is this human made of?" "Stubbornness, apparently," Ravos said quietly. He opened a direct channel. "Price, you need rest. You've been in continuous combat for over 24 hours. Owen's response was interrupted by heavy breathing and the sound of weapons fire. "Can't stop." "The swarm are pulling back from multiple sectors. They're consolidating around something. I think I found their local command center." "Price, that's suicide. If you've found their command center, it will be heavily defended. We need to coordinate a full assault with... By the time you coordinate, they'll have relocated. I'm going in now while they're confused. Stay out of Sector 2 Alpha. Things are about to get messy." The channel closed. Prevost slammed 3 of his fists on the command console, while the 4th rubbed his temples in frustration. "That human is going to get himself killed." "Maybe," Vass said. "But look at the tactical map, Commander. The sectors he's hit, the targets he's eliminated, the disruptions he's caused. The swarm are adapting their entire strategy around him. They're pulling forces from other sectors to hunt him specifically, forces that would otherwise be overwhelming our troops." Provost studied the map and realized his lieutenant was right. The swarm had diverted an estimated 40% of their combat strength to tracking and eliminating Owen Price. It was the logical response to an unpredictable threat. But it was also weakening their assault on coalition positions across the board. "He's not trying to win the battle himself," Reln said slowly, understanding dawning. He's trying to make them focus on him so we can win the battle. He's bait, Kravost agreed. The most dangerous, effective bait in military history. And it's working. Order all sectors to take advantage of the swarm's tactical shift. Press the attack while they're distracted hunting Price. If he's giving us this opportunity, we can't waste it. On the surface, Owen moved through the ruins of what had once been a swarm breeding facility. The walls pulsed with organic material, grown rather than built. The air was thick with pheromones that made his eyes water even through his helmet filters. And everywhere there were warriors. Not the standard soldiers he'd been fighting, but specialized guards. Bigger, faster, smarter. He'd found the local hive queen's nest. Owen had studied the swarm for 3 years before this mission. He knew their biology, their hierarchy, their weaknesses. The hive queens were the key to everything. Kill a queen and every warrior connected to her hive died or went dormant. But getting to a queen meant fighting through her royal guard, warriors that had been specifically bred and trained to protect her. A normal soldier would call for backup. A smart soldier would report the position and wait for support. Owen Price did neither. He moved deeper into the nest, his rifle ready, his mind calculating angles and positions and escape routes. A royal guard spotted him and shrieked a warning. Owen put 2 rounds through its neural cluster before it could finish the sound. Then the fighting really started. They came at him from 3 directions. Owen had planned for 4, so he counted himself lucky. He fell back through a series of chambers he'd identified on his approach, each one giving him temporary cover while he picked off pursuers. His rifle was running low on ammunition. No surprise there. He'd been fighting for 26 hours straight. Time to improvise. Owen grabbed a dead warrior's blade arm and broke it off at the joint. The biological blade was still razor sharp. He used it to set a trap in the next chamber, a tripwire that would impale the next guard to come through. It worked. The guard's death shriek brought 2 more. Owen shot one and used the bioblade to kill the second in close combat. His ammunition counter showed 15 rounds left. The nest showed no signs of thinning out. This was going to be close. He found the queen's chamber by following the pheromone concentration. The walls here were thicker, reinforced with organic armor grown specifically to protect the most important individual in the hive. The entrance was guarded by 12 royal guards, each one capable of killing a trained soldier in seconds. Owen assessed his situation calmly. 15 rounds. 12 guards. Math said it was impossible. But math didn't account for creativity. He used his last explosives to create a distraction in the chamber behind him. The noise and smell of fire drew 8 of the guards away from the entrance. Owen waited until they were past his position, then stepped out and shot 4 of them from behind before they could turn around. The remaining 4 spun toward him, but he was already moving, using their own bodies as cover while he took careful shots at the guards still stationed at the entrance. 2 guards at the entrance went down. 2 guards from the patrol group were still alive. Owen was out of bullets. Time for Plan B. He dropped his rifle and charged the nearest guard with the bioblade he'd kept. The guard was faster, stronger, and built for close combat. But Owen had fought for survival on Earth, where predators didn't give you second chances. He ducked under the guard's strike, drove the bioblade into its joint, and used its own momentum to throw it into its companion. Both guards went down in a tangle of limbs. Owen grabbed a chunk of fallen masonry and used it to finish them off while they were disoriented. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't pretty. But it worked. The queen's chamber entrance was clear. Owen kicked it open and stepped inside, breathing hard, covered in blood and ichor. His armor cracked and failing, his body running on nothing but adrenaline and stubbornness. The queen was enormous, 3 times the size of her warriors, her body swollen with eggs and biomatter. She looked at Owen with compound eyes that showed something he hadn't seen in the swarm before. Individual intelligence. Fear. She spoke through pheromones and sounds that his translator struggled to interpret. "What are you?" Owen picked up a fallen guard's rifle and checked if it would fire. It wouldn't. Alien bioweapons keyed to swarm genetics. Of course. He dropped it and approached with just the bioblade. "I'm a human," he said quietly. "And you made a mistake coming to this planet." The queen tried to call for help, but Owen had already closed the distance. What happened next was brutal, necessary, and quick. When it was done, Owen stood in silence, watching the queen's life fade. All across the battlefield, thousands of swarm warriors connected to her hive suddenly stopped moving. Their connection severed, their coordination lost. Owen collapsed against the wall, finally letting his body rest. His comm crackled to life. Price, we're detecting massive swarm casualties across all sectors. What did you do? Found the Queen, Owen said simply. She's dead. How are our people? Pushing forward on all fronts. The swarm are in complete disarray. Price, you just changed everything. Good. Owen closed his eyes. I'm going to sit here for a few minutes. Maybe an hour. Tell them not to shoot me when they arrive. Understood. Extraction team is en route. Owen didn't respond. He was already asleep, his body finally giving in to exhaustion. Around him, the hive nest began to decay, its biological systems failing without the Queen's consciousness to maintain them. On the surface, coalition forces advanced through sectors that had been impassable hours before, facing swarm warriors that fought without coordination, without strategy, without hope. The battle wasn't over yet, but it was no longer in doubt. The medical bay of the Coalition command ship smelled of antiseptic and alien biology. Owen woke up in a bed designed for Navran physiology, which meant it was filled with temperature-controlled water. He floated in it, his cracked armor removed, his wounds treated with medical gel that worked on human biology about as well as it worked on everything else in the galaxy, which was to say, good enough. A Prismeta medical officer stood nearby, her crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns. She made a chiming sound that the translator rendered as surprise. The human is awake. I will inform Commander Hravost. Owen tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest. How long was I out? 16 hours. Your body showed signs of extreme exhaustion, chemical exposure, and multiple minor injuries. By our standards, you should have been incapacitated days ago. Human physiology is remarkable. Human physiology is stubborn, Owen corrected, finally managing to sit up despite the pain. What's the status of the battle? The battle is effectively over. After the local hive queen's death, the remaining swarm forces lost coordination. Coalition troops have cleared 90% of the planet's surface. Remaining swarm are scattered and isolated. We estimate total swarm casualties at 89,000. Owen did the math in his head. That number seemed high for what the coalition forces could have accomplished. What was my confirmed count? The Prismata officer's chiming took on a different tone, one the translator struggled with. Finally, it settled on, you should discuss that with the commander. That wasn't ominous at all. Owen managed to get out of the waterbed and found a set of clean fatigues that had been left for him. They were coalition standard, which meant they fit him like a tent, but they were better than nothing. He followed the medical officer through the corridors of the command ship, noting how other crew members stopped and stared as he passed. Some with respect, some with fear, most with confusion. The command center was quieter than Owen expected for a ship in the middle of military operations. When he entered, every officer turned to look at him. The room went silent except for the soft hum of electronics. Commander Hravost stood at the central display, all four of his arms hanging at his sides. His tentacles curled in what Owen had learned was the Navran equivalent of deep thought. Lance Corporal Price, you should still be resting. I've slept enough. What's going on? Why is everyone looking at me like that? Hravost gestured to the main display. It showed a comprehensive breakdown of the battle statistics. Coalition forces had performed admirably, eliminating thousands of swarm through coordinated attacks and sustained combat. The numbers were impressive, until Owen saw his own statistics listed separately. Confirmed kills 52,300, suspected kills 47,000. Total swarm casualties attributed to solo human operative 99,300. Owen read the numbers 3 times. Sure, he was misunderstanding something. That can't be right. We verified it multiple times, Lieutenant Vass said quietly. The 50,300 are confirmed through sensor data, drone footage, and direct observation. The suspected count includes the tunnel collapse and the Hive Queen's death. When she died, every warrior directly connected to her hive became dormant or died. That was approximately 47,000 individuals. You killed more swarm than the rest of the entire coalition combined, Reln said. The Chitara ambassador had come down from her station to be here in person. In 31 hours of continuous operation, one human eliminated more enemy combatants than 200,000 coalition soldiers. Owen looked at the numbers again. Something was wrong with this. I didn't do this alone. I just hit targets that were vulnerable. The coalition forces did the actual fighting, held the lines, took the casualties. Those swarm I killed would have regrouped and hit your positions if you hadn't been pressuring them on all fronts. Nevertheless, Hravos said carefully, the numbers are accurate. Your combat effectiveness exceeded anything we thought possible for an individual soldier. General Cross entered the command center, his Saros armor still showing scorch marks from battle. He approached Owen directly and did something that made every Navran in the room gasp. He knelt, bringing himself eye level with the shorter human. You saved my battalion. My soldiers were dead. We were about to be overrun. You appeared from nowhere, killed dozens of swarm and gave us time to retreat to safety. Then you disappeared before we could even thank you. I was passing through that sector anyway, Owen said, uncomfortable with the attention. Just helped out where I could. You appeared in 17 different sectors during this battle, Reln said, pulling up a tactical map. Each time coalition forces were about to break. Each time you arrived and turned the tide. It's like you were everywhere at once, seeing everything, knowing exactly where you were needed most. Owen studied the map. I was listening to your command frequencies. When I heard units in trouble, I moved to support them. Basic tactics. Basic? Vass made a burbling sound of disbelief. You moved through enemy territory faster than our fastest vehicles. You engaged targets that our sensors couldn't track. You used tactics that our military academies never conceived of. Nothing about what you did was basic. Hravost stepped closer, his voice low. Price, I need to understand something. When humanity sent you alone to this battle, did they know? Did they know what you could do? Owen thought about his training, about the other soldiers he'd served with, about what humanity had learned in 3 years of studying the galaxy. Commander, I'm not special. I'm just a regular soldier who volunteered for this mission. Any human could have done what I did. We all have the same training, the same background, the same evolution behind us. The room went very quiet. Any human? Reln's antenna quivered. You're telling us that your species has more soldiers like you? Soldiers who can operate for 31 hours straight in hostile territory, eliminate 50,000 enemies and consider it basic tactics. We have about 4 billion people who could serve in the military if needed, Owen said. I'm not even in the top percentile of our special forces. I'm just infantry. There are humans who are faster, stronger, smarter, and more experienced than me. Hravos' tentacles went completely still. It was the Navran equivalent of shock. 4 billion? Give or take. That's just Earth. We have colonies on 3 other worlds now, if you count everyone who could fight if they had to. You're looking at maybe 6 billion humans. Cross stood up slowly, his reptilian face showing an expression Owen couldn't quite read. Ambassador Carter said humanity sent exactly what this battle needed. She sent one soldier to prove a point. What point? Owen asked. That we never should have doubted you, Reln said quietly. That we never should have laughed. That humanity's commitment to the coalition isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in capability. A junior officer approached Hravost and whispered something. The commander's skin shifted through several shades of blue before he spoke to the room. The Coalition Council has requested a full debriefing on the battle. They want to understand how one soldier accomplished what an army could not. They also want to discuss humanity's future role in coalition military operations. Am I in trouble? Owen asked. Trouble? Hravost made a sound that might have been a laugh. Price, you're about to become the most famous soldier in galactic history. Every species is going to want to study your tactics, your training, your methods. You've changed how the entire coalition thinks about warfare. I just want to go home, Owen said honestly. I did my job. The swarm are defeated. Can I go home now? Reln approached him, her movements careful, almost respectful. Before you go, I need to apologize. I laughed when Ambassador Carter said humanity was sending one soldier. I called you a fool. I said you would die in the first hour. I was wrong about everything, and I am sorry. You weren't wrong to be skeptical, Owen said. On paper, one soldier against millions of swarms seems impossible. You just didn't know what humans are capable of when we're properly motivated. And what motivates humans? Hravost asked. Owen thought about his home, about the people there, about the reason he'd enlisted in the first place. Not losing. We're really bad at accepting defeat. It goes against everything our evolution taught us. When a human is cornered, when they're facing impossible odds, when every logical calculation says they should give up, that's when they're most dangerous. Because humans don't give up. We adapt, we improvise, and we survive. It's what we've done for millions of years. The Coalition owes humanity a debt, Cross said formally. Without your intervention, we would have lost this battle. Thousands of my soldiers are alive because of you. What can we do to repay this debt? Better body armor for your troops, Owen said immediately. And someone needs to teach them basic camouflage techniques. I watched Coalition soldiers march through open streets wearing bright-colored armor that could be seen from orbit. You're making yourselves targets. Also, your communication encryption is terrible. If I could listen to your command frequencies, so could the swarm. Vas pulled up a notepad and started writing. What else? Owen spent the next hour pointing out tactical improvements, weapon modifications, and training suggestions. The Coalition officers listened with careful attention, taking notes, asking questions, treating every word like it came from a military genius rather than a tired infantry soldier who just wanted a hot meal and a real bed. Finally, Hravost raised one hand for silence. Price. The Coalition would like to offer you a position as a military advisor. Your insights could save countless lives in future engagements. Name your price. We'll pay whatever you ask. I appreciate the offer, but no, I'm not a career soldier. I enlisted to help defend humanity's interests. I did that, and now I want to go home and get back to my life. What life did you have before the military? Reln asked curiously. I taught wilderness survival courses, took people camping, taught them how to find water, build fires, identify edible plants, quiet work, peaceful. That's what I want to go back to. The Coalition officers exchanged looks that clearly said they found this impossible to believe. The most effective soldier they'd ever encountered just wanted to teach camping classes. The transport ship to Earth leaves in 6 hours, Ravos said finally. You'll be on it with full honors and our gratitude. But Price, understand this. You've changed something here. The galaxy will remember this battle. They'll remember what one human did when given the chance, and they'll never underestimate humanity again. Owen nodded slowly. Good. That was kind of the point. He left the command center to arrange his transport home, leaving behind a room full of aliens who were just beginning to understand what it meant to have humanity as an ally, and what it might mean to have humanity as an enemy. On the planet below, Coalition forces were discovering something interesting in the sectors where Owen had operated. Messages written in various alien languages, left in swarm blood or carved into walls. Simple advice. Check your flanks. They hunt by sound. Fire is effective. Don't bunch up. One human had fought a battle and won, but he'd also taken the time to teach the other soldiers how to survive, because that's what humans did. They adapted, they survived, and they helped others do the same. It was the most human thing anyone had ever seen, and it terrified the galaxy more than any weapon possibly could. 3 weeks after the Battle of Dravis 7, the Coalition Council convened on the neutral station Unity Prime. Representatives from 47 member species gathered in the massive circular chamber, each bringing reports, concerns, and questions about what had happened on that distant world. Ambassador Diane Carter sat in the human delegation section, which was notably smaller than most others. Humanity was still new to the galactic community, still learning the politics and protocols that other species had practiced for centuries. But today, every eye in that chamber kept drifting to her section. Council Speaker Thren, an elderly prismata whose body had developed a deep amber color with age, called the session to order with a harmonic chime. We gathered to discuss the Battle of Dravis 7 and its implications for Coalition military doctrine. Commander Hravost, present your report. Hravost stood, his Navran body rippling with formal colors as he addressed the council. His report was detailed, professional, and thorough. He covered troop deployments, casualty figures, tactical decisions, and strategic outcomes. The council listened with patient attention until he reached the section about human involvement. Lance Corporal Owen Price of the Human Defense Force was the sole human combatant deployed to Dravis 7. Operating independently for 31 hours of continuous combat, he achieved a confirmed kill count of 52,300 swarm soldiers, with an additional 47,000 casualties attributed to his elimination of the local Hive Queen. This represents 59% of total enemy casualties in the engagement. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives from species who hadn't been at Dravis 7 demanded clarification, certain there must be an error in the translation. Those who had been there remained quiet, their silence speaking louder than words. Order. Thren's chime rang out like a bell. Commander Hravost, you're stating that one soldier from a species barely 3 years into Coalition membership eliminated more enemies than the combined forces of the Coalition's most experienced military powers? That is correct, Council Speaker. I have verified the data personally, multiple times. A Soros Council member stood, his scales shifting to aggressive red patterns. This is impossible. No individual, regardless of species, could achieve such results. I demand an independent investigation. I support that demand, added a Chitara representative. The numbers suggest either massive sensor malfunction or deliberate falsification of data. Relin rose from her seat, her antennae held high. I was at Dravis 7. I witnessed Price's actions firsthand through drone footage and sensor data. I personally led a battalion through a sector he had cleared. The numbers are accurate. The human did exactly what the report claims. General Cross stood as well. Price saved my battalion when we were surrounded and facing annihilation. I owe him my life and the lives of 500 Soros warriors. His combat effectiveness was unlike anything in our military history, but it was real. Thren looked to Diane. Ambassador Carter, the Council requires explanation. How is this possible? Diane stood slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. Council members, when Commander Hravost contacted humanity requesting military support for Dravis 7, our military leadership analyzed the situation carefully. The swarm are a hive mind species. They coordinate perfectly. They adapt quickly. They fight with overwhelming numbers. Traditional military tactics would result in high casualties on both sides. So humanity sent one soldier? A Whisperer representative asked, confusion evident in their pheromone cloud. We sent exactly what was needed, Diane continued. The swarm's strength is coordination through their hive mind. Their weakness is that same coordination. They think collectively, which makes them predictable to someone who understands their patterns. They rely on numbers, which makes them vulnerable, to tactics that turn those numbers into a liability. And humans understand these patterns? Thren asked. Humans are very good at hunting things that are dangerous, Diane said carefully. We evolved on a world where nearly everything was trying to kill us. We learned to study our prey, understand their behavior, exploit their weaknesses. We learned to be patient, to strike when victory was certain rather than fighting fair. We learned to use our environment as a weapon and turn our prey's strengths against them. Prey? The Soros representative's scales shifted to purple, indicating shock. You speak of warfare as hunting? Because that's what it is, Diane said simply. Humans have been persistence hunters for millions of years. We don't give up. We don't get tired, not really. We just keep coming until our prey collapses from exhaustion. Owen Price applied those same principles to the swarm. He studied them, learned their patterns, and hunted them systematically. A new voice spoke up. This one from a species humanity hadn't worked with before. The eldest, ancient beings who rarely involved themselves in coalition politics. Ambassador Carter, your species sent one soldier to prove humanity's worth to this council. You wanted us to see what humans are capable of before we made assumptions about your military value. That's part of it, Diane admitted. But mostly, Owen volunteered because he believed he could make a difference. And he was right. One soldier made a difference, Thren said slowly. What could 100 humans do? 1,000? 1,000,000? The chamber went very quiet. It was the question everyone had been thinking, but no one had wanted to ask. Diane met Thren's crystalline gaze steadily. The coalition will hopefully never need to find out. Humans prefer peace. We like teaching, learning, building things. War is something we do when necessary, not something we seek out. But if the coalition ever faces a threat that requires it, humanity will answer the call. And we'll answer it with everything we have. Is that a threat? The Soros representative demanded. It's a promise, Diane corrected. Humanity joined the coalition because we believe in cooperation, mutual defense, and shared prosperity. We're committed to those ideals. But we're also committed to surviving, and we're very good at survival. Thren was quiet for a long moment, light refracting through his ancient body in thoughtful patterns. The Council must consider carefully what this means for our future. Ambassador Carter, does Lance Corporal Price have any recommendations for Coalition military improvement? He submitted a 50-page report, Diane said, pulling up a datapad. Recommendations on everything from armor design to communication protocols to basic camouflage techniques. He spent 6 hours before his transport home teaching Coalition officers about guerrilla warfare, improvised weapons, and survival tactics. The report has been distributed to all Coalition military commands. He taught us? Cross made a rumbling sound of surprise. After proving himself superior, he shared his knowledge freely. That's what humans do, Diane said. We learn, we adapt, and we teach others. Owen wasn't trying to prove he was better than Coalition soldiers. He was trying to help them survive. Every message he left in the field, every trap he marked for Coalition forces to avoid, every tactical tip he shared, it was all about keeping people alive. Rellan stood again. I move that the Council formally recognize Lance Corporal Owen Price for extraordinary service to the Coalition. His actions saved thousands of lives and secured a crucial victory. Humanity deserves our thanks, not our suspicion. The motion passed unanimously. Even the species that had been skeptical couldn't argue with the results. There is another matter, Thren said. Multiple species have requested permission to study human military tactics, to invite human advisors to their military academies, to learn from humanity's approach to warfare. How does humanity respond to these requests? Diane smiled slightly. We'll share what we can. Send your officers to Earth. We'll teach them what they want to know. But understand something important. You can't make your soldiers human. You can't give them our evolution, our experience, our particular brand of stubbornness. You can learn our tactics, but tactics alone aren't what made the difference at Dravis 7. Then what did? Thren asked. Owen Price never gave up, Diane said simply. He was outnumbered millions to one. He had minimal supplies, no support, and every logical calculation said he should fail. But he didn't fail because humans don't know how to quit. We keep going until we win or until we're dead, and even then we make sure we took some enemies with us. That's not something you can teach in a military academy. It's something you either have or you don't. The council session continued for hours, discussing budgets and deployments and strategic implications. But everyone in that chamber understood that something had changed. Humanity wasn't the newest species anymore, stumbling around trying to figure out galactic politics. Humanity was a power to be reckoned with, maybe not in numbers, not yet, but in capability, in determination, in sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat. On Earth, in a small mountain town in what had once been called Colorado, Owen Price was teaching a survival class to a group of teenagers. They were learning how to build a shelter from branches and leaves, how to find clean water, how to start a fire without matches. Simple skills, peaceful skills, the kind of thing Owen actually enjoyed. One of the students, a girl about 16, looked up from her struggling fire attempt. Mr. Price, is it true you fought aliens? Owen glanced at her, then back at the fire she was building. Your kindling is too damp. Find stuff that's been off the ground, under cover. And yes, I served in the military for a while. I heard you killed like 1 million aliens or something, another student chimed in. Rumors are always exaggerated, Owen said, which wasn't exactly answering the question. Focus on your fire. In a real survival situation, fire means the difference between life and death. It keeps you warm, purifies water, cooks food, and provides psychological comfort when you're alone and scared. The students went back to their work, accepting the subject change. Owen watched them struggle with basic skills that might save their lives someday. This was what mattered. Teaching people to survive, to think, to adapt. The battle on Dravis 7 was over. The killing was done. Now he could get back to helping people live. His comm unit buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Diane Carter. The council session went well. You're officially a galactic hero now. Several species want you to come teach at their military academies. I told them you're retired. Owen typed back a simple response. Good, I'm busy. Busy teaching camping to kids? Important work. These kids need to know how to survive, just like I did at their age. Thanks for handling the politics. That's my job. You handled the fighting. Fair trade. How's civilian life treating you? Owen looked at his students, at the mountains around them, at the clean sky unmarred by drop pods or weapons fire. Better than combat. Much better. He put the comm away and helped a student who was struggling with their shelter design. The conversation moved to knot tying and the students' upcoming exams and whether they'd get to do the advanced class next season. Normal things. Human things. In orbit around Earth, coalition ships came and went, trade flourishing, diplomatic relations deepening. Humanity was becoming more integrated into galactic society every day. The Council's official after-action report on Dravis 7 had been distributed to every member species. The conclusion was carefully worded but clear. Human military capability exceeds initial projections by orders of magnitude. Recommend maximum cooperation and minimum provocation. Humanity's commitment to the coalition is proven. Their potential as allies is extraordinary. Their potential as enemies is unthinkable. One addendum had been added by Commander Hravost himself, a note that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Lance Corporal Owen Price, when asked what motivated his actions at Dravis 7, stated simply that humans don't like losing. This undersells the reality. Humans don't just dislike losing. They find it personally offensive. They will adapt any tactic, use any weapon, exploit any advantage, and outlast any opponent rather than accept defeat. This makes them the most dangerous allies and the most terrifying enemies in known space. Final recommendation. In any future coalition military operation requiring fewer than 1,000 soldiers, consider requesting human support. In operations requiring more than 1,000 soldiers, question whether humans are necessary. One Lance Corporal achieved 59% of total combat effectiveness. Scale accordingly. The report was marked classified, but like all classified things, it leaked within weeks. Every species in the galaxy read it. Every military leader studied it. Every politician considered its implications. And in a mountain town on Earth, Owen Price taught another fire-starting class, completely unaware that he'd become a legend. Or more accurately aware, but choosing not to care. He'd done his job. He'd helped his people and his allies. Now he was home, teaching the next generation how to survive. Because that's what humans did. They survived. They adapted. They endured. And they never ever gave up. Years later, when the coalition faced new threats and new challenges, they would remember the Battle of Dravis 7. They would remember the lesson humanity taught them that day. Not that humans were invincible or perfect or superior, but that humans were determined, resourceful, and absolutely committed to protecting what they cared about. One human, one battle. They'd laughed at the idea. Then they saw the kill count. And they never laughed at humanity again. In the quiet of the Colorado mountains, under a sky full of stars that now held allies and friends and trading partners, Owen Price smiled as his student finally got their fire started. The girl cheered and her friends congratulated her. She'd learned to survive just a little bit better than before, and that, Owen thought, was worth more than all the medals and honors the galaxy wanted to give him. Teaching people to live would always matter more than teaching people to fight.